The morning on the lake started as it always did. Calm, steady, almost sacred. The water shimmered like glass, the sun stretched itself across the horizon, and I sat at the edge of my dock with a steaming mug of coffee. That dock wasn't just planks of wood and nails. It was my sanctuary. Every board had passed through my hands, every piling sunk with my sweat. If life rewards a man for years of work and saving, that dock was my reward. Then the storm arrived, not from the sky, but from the HOA president herself. Karen marched down the community path with a wide sun hat perched on her head, bright lipstick like a stop sign, and a fat folder of violation notices under her arm. She stopped right at the line where my property met the lake. She looked at me like a general facing a captured soldier. "You have 24 hours to vacate this dock," she said coldly. "Fail to comply, and you'll face heavy fines." I lifted my coffee cup, sipped, and answered evenly. "You mean the dock that's fully permitted, inspected, and approved by the county?" "Unauthorized structure," she shot back. "Non-compliant with community standards." That was Karen, in a nutshell. Standards, her favorite word. It wasn't about safety or legality. It was about power, about control. And it was clear, this wasn't a suggestion. She was looking for a fight. My life before Karen, my name is Jack. I'm 58 years old, semi-retired after 35 years in construction. I raised 2 kids, saved every dime I could, and finally bought myself a place by the lake. Not the fanciest house on the shoreline, but mine. I thought I'd found peace. Mornings were for fishing lines and coffee steam. Evenings were for grilling with my neighbor Bob or swapping pies with the Martins down the street. Nobody cared if your lawn was a little long. Nobody measured hedges or counted how many chairs you had on the porch. Nobody except Karen. Karen wasn't the kind of neighbor you could ignore. She was in her 40s, always overdressed for a lakeside stroll, strutting with a clipboard like a queen with a scepter. She loved to make rules into a stage and herself the star. Her house was the biggest on the block, styled like a magazine photo shoot. Out front sat her prized possession, a gleaming, oversized boat polished so obsessively you could see your future in it. She paraded it across the water every weekend and always parked it just a little too close to my dock. The first violation letter came in a yellow envelope stamped with the HOA seal. Unauthorized structure. Remove dock within 30 days. Signed, Karen. I didn't panic. I walked the length of my dock, bounced on the boards, tested the cleats, and then pulled out the county permits and inspection forms. Everything was airtight. But Karen wasn't looking for paperwork. She wanted submission. By the next afternoon, she stood in front of me again. "Our standards are higher than the county's," she said, lips curling. I looked at her boat, floating smugly beside my dock. "Yeah," I said, "wouldn't want the neighbors to lose sleep over my 2x4s. She didn't laugh. She never did. She turned on her heel and declared, 30 days, Jack. Then the fines begin." And so they did. My mailbox filled daily. Dock aesthetics non-compliant. Improper lawn edging. Unapproved outdoor furniture. Fines of $50, $75, $100. A flood of petty harassment. Then she escalated. Her boat became her weapon. She tied it so close to my dock that I couldn't launch my kayak. She circled the lake like a shark, sunglasses flashing, sipping mimosas. "Community lake," she'd yell when I asked her to give me space. One Saturday, I came home to a sheriff's cruiser parked by my driveway. My stomach sank until the deputy explained an anonymous tip claimed my dock was unsafe. He walked across it, bounced once, and shook his head. Sturdier than most county bridges, he said, "Sorry to waste your time. Someone out here's got too much of their own." I didn't have to ask who made the call. The turning point fear and isolation are a bully's only weapons. Karen had realized I wasn't afraid, so she worked to isolate me. Whispers at the mailboxes, pointed fingers when she thought I wasn't looking, neighbors shifting uneasily in their chairs at HOA meetings. Some quietly told me to hang in there. Others avoided me altogether. A loyal handful parroted her lines about protecting property values. Then, one evening, I decided I'd had enough of playing defense. I opened the HOA bylaws binder, the heavy thing no one ever reads. I combed through the clauses until one line lit up like a beacon. All watercraft must be registered with the HOA and state authorities. Unauthorized storage or docking of unregistered vessels is prohibited. A thought sparked. Could her boat, the one she flaunted like a crown jewel, be unregistered? The next morning I drove to the county clerk's office. Beige walls, buzzing lights, a tired clerk at the desk. I asked about registration under Karen's address. She typed, frowned, and shook her head. No record. I asked her to check again. Same answer. I walked out of that office with a smile. So, wide strangers probably thought I'd won the lottery. Digging further, I found another gem. Dock extensions must be pre-approved by the board. I scoured 5 years of meeting minutes. Not a single vote approving Karen's oversized dock extension. Then Bob, my quiet neighbor, added the cherry on top. Jack, he said one evening, you didn't hear this from me, but the corner where she ties her boat? That's HOA property, not her lot, against the rules. I nearly dropped my fishing rod. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of compliance, was drowning in her own violations. Building the case, for weeks I gathered evidence. Photos of her dock extension with a tape measure for scale. Pictures of her boat tied illegally on HOA land. Screenshots of the county website proving no registration. Records of every time her boat blocked my dock. I indexed and time-stamped everything, neatly tabbed in a binder. One morning as she drifted past, smirking from her deck, she called out, "Enjoy your dock. While you can." I raised my mug and said, "Hope your boat's registered, Karen." For the first time, I saw her sunglasses twitch. Just a flicker. A crack in her armor. The legal hammer, her next move, was a final notice of eviction, letter shoved between the planks of my porch. Eviction. As if my dock were a trespasser. Immediate removal required. Daily fines accruing. She'd signed it, enforcement pending. I laughed once and drove straight to a property lawyer named Marcy. She read through my binder, eyebrows climbing. She's fining you while violating multiple bylaws herself? That's not just hypocrisy. That's actionable. Marcy showed me a clause I had overlooked. The HOA could impound unregistered watercraft stored in violation. My binder had everything we needed. You can request enforcement, she said, smiling. Turn her weapon against her. That week, we filed the paperwork with the county and the HOA board, not just Karen. We attached every photo, every record, and we lined up a marine towing company to be on standby the night of the next HOA meeting. Meanwhile, I spoke quietly to neighbors, over coffee with the Martins, by Bob's Grill, at the bait shop. Everyone had their Karen horror story. The bird feeder that wasn't regulation size, the shutters repainted because the blue was too cheerful. The wind chimes she called visual clutter. People had been bullied for years. They were tired. When I showed them proof, real, undeniable proof, the fear in their eyes gave way to relief. The showdown the night of the meeting, I arrived early, binder under my arm. The hall filled slowly. Neighbors whispered. Some nodded to me, others kept their faces blank. They sensed something was coming. Karen strode in wearing a navy blazer, clipboard clutched tight. She tapped the microphone and launched into her performance. Neighbors, we must protect our standards. Jack's dock is unsafe, unsightly, and non-compliant. Tonight, I propose we authorize immediate legal action. Her loyalists clapped. Others fidgeted. I stood calmly. You're right, Karen, I said. Rules matter. They apply to everyone, don't they? Of course, she said sharply. I opened my binder and raised a photo, then explained this. Your dock extension. 5 years of minutes, not a single vote approving it. Violation. Gasps rippled. I flipped the tab. Your boat. Not registered with the county. Violation. Murmurs grew louder. Another page. Your boat tied to HOA property. Prohibited storage. Violation. The room buzzed with whispers. Some who had clapped moments ago now leaned forward, eyes wide. Karen's cheeks burned red. This is irrelevant. A distraction. No, I said evenly. This is the truth. You've spent months threatening me while breaking more rules than anyone else here. You claim to protect property values, but all you've protected is yourself. Then came the knock at the door. Two men in polo shirts and Cap stepped inside. Marine Tow Company, one said, "We're here for the impound." The room fell silent. Karen leapt to her feet. "What? No, you can't." The taller man held up paperwork. Unregistered vessel stored in violation. Signed and authorized. "We're just doing our job." Neighbors followed them outside. The tow crew strapped her gleaming boat, winched it onto a trailer, and hauled it out of the neighborhood. Karen screamed, pleaded, even tried to block the truck, but it rolled on without pause. I stood on my dock, sipping coffee as the taillights disappeared. She tried to evict my dock. I said quietly, "Tonight her boat is homeless." The aftermath for weeks, Karen flailed. She wrote letters, filed appeals, called emergency meetings no one attended. The HOA board finally voted no confidence and stripped her of her title. She was given her own list of violations to resolve within 30 days. Without her aura of authority, she was just another neighbor, one people now avoided. The very people who once nodded along now barely gave her a glance. Power evaporates quickly when people realize it was never real in the first place. By the end of summer, her boat was still impounded, her dock extension flagged for removal, and her reputation shredded. Life on the lake returned to peace. The Martins brought over pies without fear of notices. Bob grilled without worrying about smoke complaints. I rebuilt a section of my dock not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Evenings were once again mine, spent fishing with my grandkids or listening to the crickets. The lesson, sometimes I see Karen walking the path. No hat, no clipboard, head down, a little sad. I don't take joy in her downfall. Not entirely. What I do take joy in is the reminder that bullies don't win forever. They thrive on fear and on silence. But the moment someone stands up, calmly, with facts, the illusion crumbles. If you've built something with your own hands, protect it. If someone tries to strip you of it with words or threats, don't fold. Gather your facts, stand your ground, and remember, rules only work if they apply to everyone. Karen tried to take my dock. Instead, she lost her boat, her crown, and her control. And me? I still have my dock, my coffee, and my peace.